Y'all ready? Okay. Well, good morning. For the record, my name is Joe Curtatone. I'm the mayor of Somerville. I want to thank you for coming out today to Somerville City Hall. As you know, yesterday, myself and City Manager Rich Rossi of Cambridge released a joint statement where we announced our intention to seek funding from our local legislative bodies, the collective amount of $75 million, $25 million from Cambridge and $50 million from Somerville to help and assist bridge any funding gap to allow the Green Line Extension project to continue. It's a decision we did not come to lightly. I think I speak for the city manager myself. Our communities have many critical needs, many infrastructure needs for the future, but the Green Line project and the extension is just so important to the corridor communities of Cambridge, Somerville, and Medford, but for the entire region, that we felt we made an investment. We're making an offer to seek an investment from the municipalities that has been made very clear to us that will be necessary to move the project forward, but also something we're able to pay that will allow us to unlock the economic opportunities for our communities, for the region, for the Commonwealth, and bring the environmental benefits we seek. With that, I'd be happy to take any statements you have, any questions you have to address the statement we made. That's a good question. You know, we've been in conversations with the Commonwealth, and I want to thank Secretary Pollack, MassDOT, the governor, and the interim project team led by Jack Wright. And they've worked collaboratively with the cities on trying to identify creative ways to rescope, value engineer, financing mechanisms of the project. You know, and the issue of community contributions had come up, but it was very speculative because, as you mentioned, there was really no clear budget. What is the real budget of the Green Line? And the great work, our hope is now with the great work done by the value engineering team and the information that will be presented to the fiscal management control boards and the MassDOT boards on the 9th will make that clear, the budget clearer. Our understanding is the budget's coming more in line to the original budget. However, there will still be some gap, which necessitates the move that was taken by the Metropolitan Planning Organization to shift $152 million of earmark monies for the Route 16 leg, and has made very painfully clear to us that a contribution from the municipalities would be necessary as well. So our hope is that all that work to bring the project more in line with value engineering, the great work the interim project team has done, along with the city's contribution and the MPO's move, would allow a positive vote from both the Fiscal Management Control Board and the MassDOT Board at their next meeting. Yes, Danielle? Well, I fathom that'll be a question I'm asked. Actually, I've been asked a lot. You know, why do we have to pay money? The rules have changed on us, and I share that frustration that many of my constituents are asking, and I'm sure City Manager Rossi's answering as well. We're in a new paradigm, and we all know and understand around the country the funding of major transportation infrastructure projects is becoming a challenge. We are willing to participate in a new policy that asks for municipalities to contribute, but we are hopeful, as the Commonwealth has already recognized, that this will be a policy that will be treating everybody fairly, the same, and equitably. And although it is a significant contribution, again, it's not something we come to lightly. It was made very clear to us, it became very apparent to us that it would be necessary for the cities and the corridor to make a significant contribution to help bridge the gap. And we did so understand that it would unlock the incredible benefits for the Green Line. Now, you mentioned that is something they're obligated to. They are legally obligated to the Green Line. But I also want to state and reemphasize the Green Line project is important not just for our communities, but for the Commonwealth, because it unlocks more than 18 million square feet of development. It brings more than 30,000 jobs, more than 10,000 units of housing. It adds more than $3 billion to the Massachusetts economy. The benefits of the Green Line are for the entire Commonwealth. In fact, it is such a great project, it received the highest federal funding grant for a project of its kind in the state's history. That's why there's $1 billion sitting on the table. So while it's a legal obligation, I want everyone to understand that this project impacts everybody in Massachusetts positively. It is important for everyone. And while my constituents have a right to be frustrated, and all the constituents in our communities understand that unlocking this economic growth and environmental justice for our communities will more than pay for our contribution. Well, I'm optimistic. Those boards have to make, the Fiscal Management Control Board and MassDOT boards have to make their own independent decision. What is being presented, from what I understand the number of money, is where the project stands, and they have been getting regular updates from the interim project teams. What is the result of the rescoping and value engineering, the obvious move by the Metropolitan Planning Organization yesterday to be willing to shift $152 million if needed towards the project, and this unprecedented, extraordinary move by Somerville and Cambridge would be my hope, gives me optimism that the project will be very close in line to original budgets or budget goals that will allow them the justification for a positive vote to move the project forward. So I'm more confident than I was 7 months ago. I feel optimistic because of the benefits of this project. It is too important for the Commonwealth. If we can't build the Green Line with all these benefits, with $1 billion on the table, with all the great work that's been done, what can we do in Massachusetts? We sit in the 6th most congested region in these United States. Congestion does incredible environmental harm. It is an economic killer. This project unlocks an economy for the region, for the Commonwealth. It brings environmental justice to some of the most vulnerable, underserved neighborhoods who have suffered and sucked into pollution for generations from I-93 and Route 28. We need to get this done. And Somerville and Cambridge have stepped up, again, in an extraordinary, significant way, unprecedented, because it's so important. That should give confidence to everybody how important this is. Adam? Yes, it definitely could happen, and it is our intention as developers actually retain entitlements. And in that project in North Point, the North Point developers have development entitlements. We don't have any developers with entitlements. We have one prospective development team, US2, working in Union Square. It'll be our intention and approach with that development team and future development teams to engage them in negotiations and conversations to seek contributions to infrastructure for the Green Line and for other necessary infrastructure. Yes? We're going to look at a variety of funding means to do so. We're prepared on many different fronts. We're working, and I want to thank the Baker administration. Has been very open to help us understand what assistance they can help us to smooth out any impact. Again, Somerville and Cambridge, we have hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure needs. And to do this, we want to make sure we don't jeopardize those projects that we have locally in the future. We put forth a number that it was made painfully clear we felt was necessary to do. It was made clear that it was necessary to do that, but we also could afford. So it's incumbent upon me to present to the Board of Aldermen what the plan and strategy will be and what the mechanisms will be to pay for that, whether it's general obligation bond or there are mechanisms through the state on the cherry sheet or other assessments. We're going to look at a way that has the least impact on our operating budget and on our taxpayers moving forward, but allows for this project to move forward. And I'll present that in the upcoming weeks to the Board of Aldermen as we seek any authorization they may have to put forth. Danielle. Well, as you know, the conversation around value capture in the legislature is not moving as fast as the review process for this project. So we can't hold our breath for that. If there is some mechanism that helps us in this, aids and assists us, some value capture too that's more broad-based, it's certainly something we'll engage and entertain. And right now in Massachusetts, there's only 2 forms of value capture, and they're both designated for intense redevelopment areas. That would be District Improvement Finance and DIF, and iCube, which is the Infrastructure Investment Incentive Tool, which we've used both of those in Assembly Square successfully, and we'll still examine those tools for many of our infrastructure needs. So we're going to look at a variety of tools and means to help us accomplish our responsibility to pay any commitment we make and not jeopardize future infrastructure projects. But those conversations are still fluid. We expect the Green Line extension is in line with the fully funded grant agreement from the federal government. What that means is the federal government's $1 billion is conditioned upon 6 or 7 new stations. And the new leach, 7 including Union Square. The Route 16 station, which was College Ave to Route 16, was not a condition of the fully funded grant agreement. That was a different earmark funding source. That's the money that's been shifted. It's our goal to go to Route 16 because Route 16 will service more than 10,000 people in a half-mile radius and brings incredible ridership and environmental remediation to the region, getting cars up the street. So 7 total, including going all the way to Tufts into Union Square. Well, many, not just Hispanics, we have a very diverse population. We have many environmental justice zones, some vulnerable populations who've been susceptible to the environmental harm and health hazards of living near congested areas around highways especially. We know those populations that have greater susceptibility to respiratory illness, lung disease, heart disease, and premature death, which is one of the most critical reasons why this project is important. The Green Line extension will help alleviate that environmental harm and promote public health. The Green Line extension will also make transportation more equitable and more affordable for those populations in the entire community, which will make the cost of living in this region a little bit more bearable. In a region that needs 435,000 units of housing by 2040, in a region that is the second most gentrifying region in these United States outside the Bay Area. So yes, those populations and others will all benefit from it. In my conversations and briefing the aldermen thus far, I'm very optimistic, but again, they will have their review process and they'll do their due diligence. While I think I speak for them because I think we share the same feeling. We don't like doing this. We understand the necessity of it. And there's frustration that, as I mentioned earlier, in their minds and that of the community, that the rules have changed, and they have changed. It's a new paradigm. And moving forward, there's probably a new way of doing business. These projects will only be funded or can be funded with more local and regional participation. My hope is that the Commonwealth uses this as a model and approach to think about the legislative and financing tools we can give to municipalities and regions to help accomplish this as we think about other critical transportation projects. This region is such a critical region for New England, for the country, for the world. But if we want to be competitive in the 21st century global economy, then we need a 21st century transportation system. It's important we're making the investments to bring what we have up to a good state of repair, but we can't compete with the major regions of the world in the 21st century global economy with Nixon-era infrastructure. That has to change. The aldermen in my brief conversations were looking forward to the plan we present to justify paying and putting forth the $50 million and how we pay for it, and they'll evaluate that carefully. I'm optimistic they'll act on it positively, but that's their decision. But they have expressed a painful reality. Understand that they recognize the painful reality of the situation while expressing their frustration. No, I haven't put forth a plan to the board. That'll be forthcoming in the next several weeks. I've just told them what I'm going to be asking them for. I told them what things stood as of yesterday. They understood and look forward to seeing what we put forth. I briefed the aldermen yesterday. I just gave them I informed them of the release and the statement that we're making. Well, sure. We've been in conversation now with the state for several months, initially more around the status of the project, where we were back last September, as you recall, as it became clear that projected cost for continuing the project had skyrocketing, and we're seeing this around the country as well. As the interim project team was announced a few months later, and they came into It wasn't until really they were in play and they started working closely with the communities, trying to stand and identify creative ways to rescope, value engineer, possibilities to bring in the project more in line with the original budget. Over the last few weeks, even as that good work is showing promise and great promise and yielding great results, it became very clear to us in our conversations that there'd be some gap, and that gap would necessitate, again, painful reality that municipalities would have to make some contribution. And in the last few days, we came to a decision what that contribution would be. Yes. No, we will not be putting forth debt exclusion on this money. The city of Somerville, we will make our recommendation with full understanding that our assumptions will be conservative. And what I mean by that is that we have to assume that nobody else will contribute to it, that we have full risk on ourselves. That way we're prepared for any change of circumstances. Now, as you just mentioned, we do have other major infrastructure projects. We've put forth the city's first ever 10-year capital improvement plan. We are in the process of recalibrating and reprioritizing that plan. This decision and the priority of this decision may cause us to reevaluate some of the priorities and the timing of some of those priorities. Oh, where have you been? No, I've made it very clear we will not relinquish our legal rights on this project to pursue this project as required by the Commonwealth, as admitted by the Commonwealth. That is their legal obligation, and that obligation isn't dependent upon who sits in office in the Commonwealth. It is a legal obligation. But I want to make it clear, the Baker administration, Secretary Pollack, the MassDOT team, the interim project team have been working constructively and collaboratively with the municipalities. The realities are harsh, but it would have been a harsh reality if they just dismissed the project from the onset. So I will respect their approach to this project. It's been prudent and practical. They've worked with us and tried to be creative in every way possible to move the project forward. That's what gives me the greatest optimism that we'll continue to move forward. They could have easily dismissed it behind some ideology several months ago, and they didn't do that. I feel confident they do want to do it. The Secretary, the Governor, we want to build the best Green Line extension project possible while being fiscally responsible. We agree with that approach. Yeah, I wish it was as easy as small claims court, and we are confident in our legal rights on this project. We've been waiting for the Green Line for generations. We are in the ground. The Commonwealth is already sunk for $800 million of taxpayer money in the ground. If you walk down the street, the Green Line's under construction right behind this building and on Medford Street. $800 million that will not be refunded. And the balance and the promise of $1 billion from the Fed sitting there, and the promise of incredible economic opportunity for the region and the Commonwealth and environmental justice. We're so close. I think the prudent approach is to move forward collectively and cooperatively to the next phase. Again, we're not going to relinquish our legal rights on this project, but it's about how we move forward. Again, as frustrated as we are that we're doing something we never expected we'd have to do here, that's the harsh reality of the situation we're facing. I think you've seen there were public resolutions by both boards as to what they would consider, what they bring into consideration as to whether or not they'd vote to move the project forward or not. And it was made very clear in that and throughout the process that they'd be seeking contributions for communities and developers. That'll be a critical component, and they'd be very reluctant to add any new monies to this. That reality was made very clear to us and became very clear to us. The necessity of putting forth this historic and unprecedented and extraordinary contribution from Somerville and Cambridge as a result of that reality. No, everything we're doing in terms, with any major construction project, we're going to have some disruption. Just come around Somerville. Part of the consequence of our great economic growth, that there are cranes everywhere, but we'd rather have cranes in the air, making our life a little bit inconvenient every day than not having any construction in the city. This project is critical to bring economic opportunity to all, to fuel the future economy of Somerville and the region, so we're very excited for it. Medford has been part of the conversation. This announcement yesterday is strictly Somerville and Cambridge contribution. As you know, yesterday the MPO voted the Route 16 leg, which would have gone through the hillside neighborhood of Medford. It ended on the Somerville, Medford, East Darlington line. That phase is probably looking at a later day for ever happening. It's something we want to have happen, but Medford is a different conversation with the Commonwealth. Danielle? Yeah. Our promise is to go to our legislative bodies, respective legislative bodies, the Board of Aldermen and the City Council in Cambridge, to request them to support the investment. And we, in a letter of intent that we've executed to the Secretary, that is stated clearly in that. It's not merely a tactical move. Our intention would have been announced at the meeting presented as part of the Secretary's overall presentation and the interim project team's overall project presentation of where the status and cost of the new budget would be, new project scope would be, and what other funding resources have been brought to bear. Yes, I will be there on Monday. I made it very clear that I will propose to the Board of Aldermen. They will evaluate and make a determination. I briefed them on that, and they'll be anxiously awaiting the plan to pay for their $50 million and how that impacts other decisions as well. I can take a couple more questions. Yep. No, the stop that. I'm sorry, finish your question. No, there was some conversation a few months ago from consultants about whether we should do the Union Square stop. Let me make it clear, the fully funding grant agreement, the almost $1 billion from the federal government, is conditioned upon all those stops. The new Leechmere station and the stops going up to Tufts on the lower line and the Union Square station. The stop from Tufts to Route 16 was not a condition of the fully funded grant agreement. That was a different earmark. We are putting, my recommendation for $50 million to be paid towards the Green Line extension is also conditioned upon those stops all being done. Again, see what happens Monday. We're very optimistic. Somerville's thriving now. Its local and small business base is strong. We've worked hard for more than a decade now to cultivate an environment where local entrepreneurs can hone their craft, whether you're an artisan, a fabricator, a maker, a restaurateur, an innovator of cuisine. You are thriving in this community because We've created a community where people can bike, can walk, that is safe. We've emphasized that our squares and corridors are destinations. They're thriving. But the Green Line really unlocks so much more. I hope our move, our recommendation gives them confidence that we're serious about getting this project done. And again, I'm optimistic that the vote will be positive on Monday, but we'll see what the boards do. The message was saying that, hey, and we've been saying along that we're a serious partner, and that we're a willing partner. We're willing to go first. If this is indeed a new paradigm and a new policy for the Commonwealth, we're willing to go first and do it. And I think it was quoted by, you had a quote from Mark Drayson, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, who said, just the way projects have been done historically has been the federal government and the states. Never before have municipalities ponied up in the way we're suggesting we pony up. So we're a very serious partner, and this project is a very serious project for everyone. Well, so as part of our Sustainable Neighborhoods Working Group to address the housing crisis, at least in our community, a transfer fee is one of the things that'll be considered. In terms of the Green Line extension, we're looking at a variety of means of funding. I submit that any measures beyond what is available or narrowly can be created would be unlikely for the Green Line. I'd have to go through a legislative process, but we're open to any idea that helps us spread out the burden and liability of the payment. So I got one last question, and I got to go. Danielle? So we haven't landed on that yet. We're examining a variety of options. We're working with the Commonwealth. We're going to be creative as much as possible. Our goal is to, again, we've put forth a number that is not abstract. We put forth an amount that we felt based on the reality of where we are in the project and what that made it painfully clear to us was necessary to be put forward, but one that we can afford to pay. So we're going to look beyond what is obvious, any obvious means before us to make payment, and we'll present that as part of a comprehensive plan to the board to make payment. Okay? Hey, thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.